Where did humanity truly originate? If you've been raised on the oversimplified myth that humans evolved directly from modern apes, then prepare to pause. Is this the absolute truth, or merely a fragmented narrative? The reality is far more complex. Humanity did not descend from the apes we see today. How then did humanity emerge? It is a biological paradox reminiscent of the classic riddle. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? If the egg preceded the bird, how did it manifest without its progenitor? And if the bird arrived first, how was it born without an egg? Now project this same enigma onto our own existence. We say, I am the child of my parents, but where did they originate? They too had ancestors, an unbroken lineage stretching back into the shadows of deep time. The question remains, who was the definitive first link in this infinite chain? Was it a man or a woman? And if procreation necessitates the union of both, how did the very first humans spark into being? To uncover the answer, we must transcend the present and journey back 66 million years into the depths of prehistory, an era when humanity was non-existent and the planet was the undisputed domain of colossal, terrifying apex predators, the dinosaurs. Until a fateful day when a gargantuan asteroid collided with the Earth. The kinetic energy unleashed was cataclysmic, equal to the combined fury of millions of atomic bombs. In the wake of this cosmic inferno, the dinosaurs, titans that had dominated the Earth for a staggering 150 million years, were utterly annihilated. The aftermath of this colossal impact was absolute devastation, wiping out a staggering 75% of all plant and animal life on the planet. Yet, from the ashes of this apocalypse, the stage was set for the dawn of humanity, a crucible from which we would eventually rise to claim the throne once held by the dinosaurs. But the ascent of mankind was far from inevitable. It begs a profound question that has likely haunted you as well. Exactly when, and from where, did humans truly emerge? What did these early ancestors look like? Were they reflections of our modern selves, or entirely alien? And by what miraculous mechanisms did they evolve? The conventional narrative suggests our forebears were early Homo sapiens, nomadic hunter-gatherers foraging through primordial forests, surviving on a rugged diet of wild flora and raw meat. But where does the myth end and the science begin? Let us delve deep into the fossil record to uncover the definitive truth. Were we simply advanced apes, primitive cave dwellers, or something entirely unexpected? As we established, the cataclysmic asteroid strike 66 million years ago triggered the sudden, violent end of the dinosaur reign, and it dragged the rest of the world down with it. Towering forests, diverse ecosystems, and countless species were obliterated. Because this was no ordinary extinction event, it was an apocalypse of unimaginable scale. The impact ignited global firestorms that ravaged the continents for years, reducing lush habitats to smoldering wastelands. Almost nothing was spared. The skies were rendered utterly lifeless. The sheer thermal radiation of the impact superheated the atmosphere, effectively turning ancient rivers and oceans into boiling cauldrons of steam and liquid fire. Where lush greenery once thrived, only a hellscape of flames remained. Every beast, every sprawling forest was reduced to smoldering ash. Then a perpetual suffocating impact winter blanketed the Earth, a long dark night that would endure for years. Yet, amidst this abyssal darkness, life stubbornly clung on. Deep beneath the scorched crust, hidden within the labyrinthine depths of subterranean caves, tiny, unassuming creatures, some smaller than modern insects, were still drawing breath. They had miraculously shielded themselves from the cosmic fallout. These primitive early mammals possessed neither profound intelligence nor brute strength. Yet they harbored an extraordinary spark, absent in the fallen titans, an unyielding primal will to survive. It was this sheer resilience that drove them into the deep subterranean fissures, escaping the apocalyptic surface. But emerging into this new world presented a grim reality. The surface was utterly barren, devoid of sustenance, fresh water, and choked by an atmosphere thick with toxic soot and severely depleted of oxygen. But evolution favors the adaptable. Life, driven by an absolute will to survive, finds a way. These resilient pioneers defied the odds, scavenging the barren detritus, subsisting even on the charred organic remnants hidden within the ash, clinging to existence against all odds. Over millions of years, it was from this fragile subterranean lineage that the genetic seed of humanity was sown, ultimately giving rise to the most cognitively advanced species to ever walk the earth. This unprecedented evolutionary leap was not instantaneous. It was a grueling journey spanning epochs. It began only when the smoldering, lifeless globe finally began to heal, paving the way for the agonizingly slow return of flora. Chapter 2: The Planet Reborn. The saga of our origins now reaches a pivotal threshold, a moment where, out of the sterilized ashes of a dead world, a miraculous resurgence of life begins to take root. It is a spectacle of profound, almost magical beauty, as if an unseen, elemental force had taken up a cosmic brush to repaint the scarred canvas of the Earth. Roughly 65 million years ago, during the Paleogene period, the deafening silence of the aftermath finally yielded. Slowly, the relentless march of time ushered in shifting climates. The planet's infernal heat gradually subsided, and the suffocating atmospheric shroud began to clear. As the toxic dust settled, the very first rays of sunlight pierced the gloom, touching the surface, triggering an almost miraculous reawakening. After centuries of atmospheric chaos, the clearing skies finally released their bounty, the first drops of life-giving rain. For the subterranean survivors, it was their first taste of fresh water in untold generations. Consider the sheer desperation, the agony of enduring even a single day without water in our modern lives. Yet, entire lineages of these resilient pioneers had lived and died without ever knowing a single drop. When the deluge finally arrived, it didn't just quench their primal thirst, it slaked the profound dehydration of the Earth itself. The gentle drizzle escalated into torrential downpours, washing over the charred, apocalyptic landscape. And in every newly formed pool, the microscopic stirrings of biological rebirth began to take hold. Water pooled in the craters and crevices, giving rise to pristine, ancient lakes. Beneath their calm surfaces, dormant seeds, survivors of the cataclysm, finally began to germinate. The oppressive global heat wave broke. Cool, refreshing winds swept across the continents, marking a dramatic climatic shift. The Earth was transforming into a damp, temperate haven. Simultaneously, the abrasive ash and pulverized rock from the impact dissolved into the watercourses, acting as a cosmic fertilizer to create rich, dark topsoil. Bathed in sunlight and a newly oxygen-rich atmosphere, this primordial soil became wildly fertile. Flora erupted from the ground. Initially, delicate ferns and mosses crept across the terrain, blanketing the scars with an emerald green carpet, soon followed by the explosion of angiosperms, flowering plants and fruiting shrubs, which rapidly evolved into towering, majestic trees. The Earth, once a dead ember, was vibrantly, triumphantly green once more. Primeval forests reclaimed the Earth, with golden sunlight once again piercing the dense canopy. Thus, a vibrant biological renaissance was born. From the very ashes of absolute annihilation, a resurrected world began to draw breath. But a profound mystery lingers. What became of those diminutive subterranean survivors, the resilient few who scavenged the soot of a ruined planet? By what extraordinary evolutionary mechanism did they transform into complex mammals and ultimately into humanity? Let us turn the page on this epic saga to discover how these tiny pioneers conquered the globe and address the eternal question: did we truly descend from modern apes, or is the truth far more astonishing? Chapter 3: From insect hunters to the mammalian empire. As water, wind, and sunlight breathed life back into the planet, our minuscule ancestors, those who had cowered in subterranean darkness and subsisted on ash to cheat extinction, finally emerged into the light. Across countless generations, this resilient mammalian lineage began a rapid diversification, branching out into a myriad of new forms, evolving into the earliest shrews, agile rodents, and sleek primitive feline ancestors. Meanwhile, the few surviving avian dinosaurs were taking to the skies, evolving into the first true birds, while reptiles like snakes and lizards carved out their own ecological niches. But the mammals? They were forging an entirely separate, unprecedented evolutionary path. No longer condemned to scavenging ash, they became active hunters, preying on insects and smaller fauna to thrive. Meet the scribbler, an agile early ancestor venturing out to conquer the lush, newly formed canopies of this reborn world. Possessing soft fur for vital thermal regulation and bright, highly perceptive eyes, they harbored an evolutionary superpower, a stark, biological advantage that fundamentally separated them from the cold-blooded reptilian titans of the pre-impact world. While adept at hunting insects, the scribbler began to diversify its palate, tasting the sweet, nutrient-rich fruits of a rebounding flora. This astonishing biological renaissance, the absolute reshaping of Earth's destiny, ignited precisely 65 million years ago. Generation after generation, these early mammals mutated and diversified into a myriad of astonishing forms. Some even defied gravity, evolving the extraordinary ability to conquer the skies, ultimately becoming the ancestors of modern bats. But perhaps the most mind-bending evolutionary journey belongs to the whale. Eons later, certain wolf-like terrestrial mammals began wading back into the primordial waters in search of aquatic prey. Over millions of years, their terrestrial limbs morphed into powerful flippers, committing them entirely to the deep. The majestic whales and sleek dolphins we know today are the direct descendants of these land-dwelling beasts. Others ascended into the dense canopies to become the very first primates, while those that roamed the vast plains evolved into the titans of the modern world: elephants, horses, lions, bears, and tigers. This entire sprawling, magnificent empire traces its lineage back to that single, tiny scribbler. But this epic transformation was far from instantaneous. Approximately 55 million years ago, deep within the steamy, impenetrable jungles of prehistoric Africa and Asia, the very first primates, our most distant ancient ancestors, finally emerged. These agile, arboreal acrobats lived entirely in the canopy, thriving on a diet of rich fruits while leaping effortlessly from branch to branch. Today, the distant echoes of these early pioneers survive in modern lemurs and tarsiers. Then, roughly 20 million years ago, spanning the turbulent Miocene, Pliocene, and Pleistocene epochs, the Earth witnessed an explosive acceleration in mammalian evolution and unprecedented biological diversification. Driven by violent climate shifts, tectonic continental drift, and wildly fluctuating environments, this era of geological chaos acted as a crucible, forging thousands of entirely new species. Chapter 4: The Explosion of Life. Then, roughly 20 million years ago, the Miocene epoch ushered in a second colossal explosion of mammalian life. The distant descendants of that single, unassuming scribbler were now radiating into countless, spectacular forms. It was a relentless evolutionary arms race that unleashed a biological stampede across the continents. Early horses evolved breathtaking speed, while their sturdy ancestors gave rise to armored, prehistoric juggernauts like the rhinoceros. The progenitors of the elephant, titanic beasts like the mastodon, grew to earth-shaking proportions. Meanwhile, in the ocean's depths, the majestic lineages of whales and dolphins had truly mastered the aquatic realm. This era also birthed the true apex predators, the formidable ancestors of modern canines, felines, bears, and hyenas. From this ruthless crucible emerged terrifyingly efficient killers, most notably the legendary saber-toothed cats. And towering above them all was the Indricotherium, a gargantuan beast that dwarfed even the largest modern elephants, an awe-inspiring gentle giant, now forever lost to the annals of extinction. From the dense, steamy jungles of Africa to the sprawling Asian steppes, over 4,000 distinct mammalian species exploded into existence, laying the rich biological foundation for the biodiversity we witness today. Yet, amidst this grand evolutionary sprint, one obscure, branching lineage held unparalleled significance: the early primates. Emerging deep within the African continent, some 20 million years ago, they were quietly preparing to change the world. They possessed prehensile hands, capable of a dexterous, vice-like grip, but their true advantage was far more profound: an unprecedented cognitive spark. This was the definitive genesis of advanced intellectual evolution. Driven by this nascent intelligence, they forged complex social bonds, navigating the canopy with acrobatic precision to forage for fruit. Gradually, this primate dynasty diverged into two grand lineages: the New World monkeys of South America and the Old World monkeys of Africa and Asia. But throughout this magnificent biological theater, a monumental secret lay hidden. The ultimate climax of this evolutionary epic, the rise of humanity, the future sovereigns of the Earth, was still waiting in the wings. Among these 4,000 burgeoning species, one lineage stood completely apart: a revolutionary new primate called the ape. Armed with robust jaws and formidable dentition, their true evolutionary weapon was a markedly larger, more complex brain than their monkey cousins. Though still fiercely tethered to the forest canopy, they began a radical behavioral experiment, attempting to balance and stand upright among the branches. This foundational ape lineage eventually fractured into 4 magnificent branches: the agile gibbon, the solitary orangutan, the powerful gorilla, and the highly intelligent chimpanzee. And finally, emerging at the very bleeding edge of primate evolution, came the ultimate offshoot: the hominins, the dawn of the human branch. It was this specific lineage that would fundamentally rewrite the biological and physical destiny of the entire planet. This marked the genesis of humanity, a species destined to alter the very fabric of the Earth. Yet, the catalyst for our extraordinary evolution was not a tranquil paradise, but the ominous rumble of impending catastrophe. Chapter 5: The African Crucible, the Dawn of Humanity. The catalyst ignited approximately 7 million years ago, as an enigmatic and profound transformation began to sweep across the African continent. The climate was fracturing once again, not in a sudden cataclysm, but in a slow, agonizingly deliberate shift. Violent tectonic convulsions tore at the Earth's crust, thrusting colossal mountain ranges into the sky. These towering new geological barriers severed ancient wind currents, physically blocking life-giving, moisture-laden air. The ecological fallout was devastating. The once impenetrable, humid jungles began to rapidly desiccate. Towering ancient trees succumbed to the drought, collapsing into dry, brittle timber that quickly ignited into spontaneous, raging wildfires. The planet seemed poised to plunge back into the apocalyptic abyss it had endured before. But this was no extinction event. Instead, this brutal environmental crucible would force our ancestors out of the dying trees, setting the ultimate stage for the rise of humankind. This relentless desolation of the forest canopy dragged on for decades. And then, the climate violently pivoted yet again. The skies opened, unleashing torrential, unrelenting monsoons that battered the scorched earth for years on end. Driven by this profound environmental shift, arboreal creatures were forced to descend from the dying canopy, tentatively adapting to a life on solid ground. Eons later, the climate fractured once more. The relentless rains finally ceased, and golden sunlight reclaimed the earth. Vast, sprawling savannas erupted across the landscape. The very creatures that once swung effortlessly through the high branches were now forced to navigate this endless sea of tall grass on all fours. Yet, amidst this struggle for survival, one distinct lineage emerged from the great apes, a groundbreaking species named Sahelanthropus chadensis, widely regarded by science as the absolute genesis of the human family tree. Possessing a marginally larger brain than its contemporaries, Sahelanthropus possessed a revolutionary capability: bipedalism. While it physically retained a distinctly ape-like appearance, the anatomical structure of its skull offered undeniable fossilized proof of an upright posture. And then came the monumental turning point. For the first time, alone and slightly hunched on the vast savanna, it took a deliberate, wobbly step on two legs. In that defining, historic moment, nature permitted our earliest ancestor to take its literal first step toward becoming human. Hearing this narrative, you might still cling to the pervasive belief that modern monkeys are the direct ancestors of humanity. But accepting such an oversimplified myth would be a critical mistake, because the global scientific community holds a radically different consensus, a profound truth unearthed through decades of rigorous excavation and astonishing fossil discoveries. Chapter 6. Were monkeys really our ancestors? Whenever we attempt to untangle the complex web of human evolution, one stubbornly persistent theory always surfaces: the idea that monkeys were our direct forefathers. The old adage claims that humans were simply monkeys in the distant past, who eventually morphed into modern man. However, a deep dive into the actual scientific record reveals a stunning reality. Nowhere in the rigorous annals of evolutionary biology does it state that we evolved directly from monkeys. This begs the ultimate question: where did this pervasive fallacy originate, and why are humans so relentlessly compared to primates? To understand our true origins, we must look to the brilliant naturalist Charles Darwin and his groundbreaking theory of evolution. He postulated that species organically adapt and mutate over vast epochs in response to their changing environment. Yet a colossal public misunderstanding arose. Darwin never explicitly claimed that mankind descended directly from monkeys. To illustrate the concept of evolution, Darwin merely offered a hypothesis: that humans and modern apes likely shared a deeply rooted common ancestor. But the public seized upon a distorted version of this idea, and a pervasive, unshakable myth was born. The scientific reality is that humans and apes evolved concurrently, but across vastly different environments and through entirely distinct evolutionary pressures. This divergent journey explains our striking biological similarities, as well as our profound, defining differences. This evidence proves that while we share a distant progenitor, monkeys are absolutely not our direct ancestors. It was within this grand evolutionary theater, driven by relentless and chaotic climatic shifts, that a radical new species was forged. This crucial biological leap occurred roughly 4 million years ago in the ancient woodlands of East Africa, spanning modern-day Ethiopia and Tanzania. This was the dawn of a landmark species, Australopithecus afarensis, and the discovery of this exact species was as thrilling and suspenseful as a Hollywood cinematic climax. The date was November 24th, 1974. Beneath the blistering, unrelenting sun of Ethiopia's Hadar region, American paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson and Tom Gray were leading a frantic, high-stakes excavation. Armed with shovels, trowels, and heavy machinery, their team had relentlessly scoured the scorched earth. Suddenly, a frantic cry pierced the arid silence. "Sir, get over here, quickly!" Johansen abandoned his tea mid-sip and sprinted across the camp toward his assistant. What awaited him in the dust would utterly shatter his comprehension of human history. Embedded within the ancient sediment lay a treasure trove of fossilized bones, fragments of an arm, a leg, ribs, and a shattered piece of a skull. Recognizing their monumental significance, the team immediately rushed the fragile remains back to the camp's field laboratory. Following exhaustive, round-the-clock analysis, scientists reached a staggering conclusion. This fossilized framework was approximately 3.2 million years old, comprising roughly 40% of an adult female skeleton. The most groundbreaking revelation lay in her anatomy. The specific curvature of her pelvic and femoral bones offered irrefutable proof that this creature could stand fully upright and walk bipedally. Yet she retained elongated arms and distinctively curved phalanges, clear evolutionary signatures indicating she was still a highly proficient, agile climber within the forest canopy. This was no ordinary primate. She was an extraordinary morphological bridge, neither entirely ape nor entirely human, but a breathtaking amalgamation of the two. They christened the fossil Lucy, a moniker inspired by the iconic Beatles track, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which happened to be echoing through the expedition camp on the night of her discovery. Lucy's species effectively resolved the elusive concept of the missing link. Her existence definitively proved that modern apes are not our direct ancestors. Rather, humanity shares a deeply rooted, branching kinship with both Lucy and the apes. Lucy epitomized this duality, navigating the arboreal heights like an ape, while traversing the terrestrial world on 2 feet like a human. But the true evolutionary superpower that would define mankind was yet to fully emerge: the profound capacity for complex thought and exploration. Here, the narrative takes an even more fascinating turn. Lucy's discovery shattered the illusion of a linear march of progress, revealing human evolution as a staggering, intricately branched family tree. Over epochs, numerous evolutionary branches withered into extinction, while a select few forged ahead. Lucy represented a pivotal, foundational branch on that very tree of life. It was from this robust lineage that, roughly 700,000 years ago, species such as Homo heidelbergensis emerged, evolving from Homo erectus. And it is from this very crucible that anatomically modern humans would ultimately arise. In the wake of Lucy's monumental discovery, morale within the scientific community skyrocketed. Fueled by this breakthrough, they aggressively intensified their relentless hunt for the absolute earliest ancestors of humankind. The relentless march of time eventually yielded the ultimate prize, the exact discovery our scientists had been hunting for: Homo sapiens. These groundbreaking fossils were unearthed deep within the Jebel Irhoud caves of Morocco, Africa. Rigorous analysis revealed a staggering age of approximately 300,000 years, establishing them as the earliest known ancestors of anatomically modern humans, bearing a striking 70% physical resemblance to us today. Yet, their true defining feature, the evolutionary spark that set them apart, was the sheer, unprecedented power of their brains, boasting a cranial capacity of 1,300 to 1,400 cubic centimeters. Their minds were not just larger, but fundamentally creative. But the evolutionary puzzle had another piece. Scientists had previously discovered an even older pivotal fossil dating back 2.5 million years: Homo habilis. Homo habilis translates literally to handyman. This title was bestowed upon them because, alongside their remains, archaeologists unearthed the very first meticulously crafted stone tools. They were the ultimate biological pioneers, the first creatures on Earth to invent and manufacture tools. But make no mistake, this was merely the discovery of humanity's opening act. The true epic begins here. Our saga of human existence does not conclude with these ancient bones. Rather, this is the exact threshold where the definitive story of human evolution truly ignites. How did early Homo sapiens forge themselves into the masters of the primal world? How did they harness the destructive power of fire and forge lethal weapons? And by what crucible did primitive humans ascend to become the modern masters of the globe? Only by unraveling these mysteries can you truly grasp the human epic. How did Homo sapiens manage to survive and ultimately thrive amidst the apex predators of the unforgiving wild? How did they evolve an intellect that eclipsed all other beasts, laying down the very foundations of complex society, spoken language, and civilization itself? To uncover these answers, do not miss part 2 of this epic journey. You will find the link waiting for you in the video description below. And before you go, if you are captivated by this voyage through deep time, ensure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can be the first to witness the final chapter of how humanity ultimately conquered the Earth. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey to the end.